I never imagined I'd marry my dying friend's scarred heart. Her bravery changed everything. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was the day the shadows overtook her bright smile, when the silence swallowed our laughter whole, and we all felt a heavy weight pressing down. It was a chilling morning, the kind that sinks into your bones like ice. Me, standing there at the hospital, clutching her hand, feeling her warmth fade slowly. How could this be our reality? Jessica was a force of nature before the diagnosis, a whirlwind of energy, laughter, and daring dreams. She taught me how to ride a bike, how to face storms with a fierce heart, but now, her bravery was a sparkling ember against an encroaching night. I remember how her face lit up when she talked about our plans for the future, making me smile through my own doubts. But I never listened close enough, not until the doctors delivered the news. Stage 4. A word that sliced through the air like glass. Her family stood in the sterile waiting room, faces pale, eyes hollow. My heart ached for them. They couldn't imagine the pain I felt too. I was her anchor, her best friend, but now it felt all-consuming and heavy. The smell of antiseptic filled my lungs, and the fluorescent lights buzzed ominously above us, highlighting the quiet dread hanging thick in the air. I noticed the threads of hope unraveling around us. Jessica had always been fierce, her laughter infectious, but now, fragile like glass, she looked up at me, eyes filled with honesty. "Promise me you'll be happy, no matter what," she whispered, a tremor in her voice. Her fingers squeezed mine, and I felt the warmth of her spirit mingling with the cold reality of her situation. I wanted to scream, to shake some sense into the universe. How was this fair? Days blurred into a blend of tears and desperate prayers, every visit turning my heart into a stage where honesty danced with despair. I tried to laugh, tried to reminisce. I wanted to hoist her spirit upwards. It almost worked until I got the call from her doctor, the news that shattered our tentative hopes. Nothing left to fight the darkness, either that, or it was too late. I stared at her scarred heart, tangled and bruised, bold against her fragile frame. Would I wear it as a badge of honor, a twist of fate that would eternally intertwine our lives? The thought tangled in my mind like a spider's web, beautiful yet haunting. Could I sacrifice my dreams for her last wish? Before I could answer, she gazed at me, breath slow and deliberate, and I thought I saw a glimmer of something fierce, vulnerability sparking into bravery. I had to make a choice, and the weight of it crashed down like a wave. I craved to hold on to her, to push against the tide, but what if marriage, merging our lives, felt like chains instead of wings? In that instant, an unthinkable question burst forth: could I truly marry her dying heart, embrace the scars, and carry her spirit forward? The clock ticked down relentlessly. The air thickened, my chest tightened. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days drifted past in a blur of sterile white walls and muffled beeping machines. Each visit to the hospital felt like peeling back another layer of my heart, revealing a rawness that I struggled to contain. Jessica's presence, though waning, was still a force, her laughter now a fragile echo, but one that ignited memories of summers filled with adventure. My mind slipped back to the time we bought ice cream under the scorching sun, giggling as sticky fingers gripped the cones too tightly to hold. Now, as I sat by her bedside, the memories felt almost cruel. How could I cherish the past knowing that our future was slipping away like sand through my fingers? No moment felt more suffocating than the one when I finally summoned the courage to talk to her about her wish. As the golden hour bathed the room in warmth, I took a deep breath, hoping to sweep in some bravery alongside my words. "Jess," I began, the way her eyes met mine gave me a flicker of hope. "About what you said, marrying your heart. It's a big step. If we do this, it'll be forever. My voice trembled, quivering with the weight of uncharted territory. Her pulse on the monitor danced lightly in response, mirroring the surge of emotion swelling within me. She smiled softly, as if that clear-eyed confidence from our youth still existed somewhere deep within her. Forever, she echoed, a bittersweet lilt to her voice. Isn't that what we've always wanted? I hesitated, focusing on the quickening beats of my heart. But what if forever feels like a cage? What if I lose you before we've truly begun? At my words, a shadow flickered across her face. I wished I could gather the pieces of her bravery that once radiated light. Instead, she turned her head and gazed out of the window, the fading sun kissing the horizon, casting both light and darkness in the stark room. I could almost see the gears turning behind her eyes, weighing hope against reality. That I don't want to be a shadow of your past, she whispered, barely more than a breath. You deserve a life, a future, without me behind you, but I can't let you go if marrying me gives you a chance to fly. The contradiction hung in the air, swaying between us like a pendulum. A small pang of guilt pierced my heart. Was accepting her heart really a chance for freedom? Or was it an anchor that would hold me fast to a fleeting moment of bliss, only to be followed by heartache that swelled like the tide? That night, the hospital corridors buzzed with a mix of nurses' soft whispers and the distant sounds of machinery keeping watch over fragile lives. I stepped outside, gasping at the cool night air, grasping for slivers of clarity beneath the myriad stars above. As I wandered the emptiness of the parking lot, the enormity of my emotions cascaded like an overwhelming tide. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Jessica's mother, a woman I had always admired for her quiet strength. Can we talk? I think you need to know something important. Draining the last of my courage, I replied and agreed to meet. My heart raced with questions as I shifted in my seat at the cafe across the street from the hospital. What could she possibly have to say? I fidgeted with my cup, steam curling and disappearing into the chill. When she arrived, the tension in her demeanor mirrored the clouds gathering outside. Her eyes were damp with unshed tears as she took a deep breath. I didn't know how to tell you this, she started, her voice trembling. Jessica has been keeping something from you, something that might change everything. That I could feel my breath hitching in my throat. What is it? The moment stretched like a tightrope, balancing between anxiety and an all-consuming dread. Her decision to marry you wasn't only about love. There's something else, something related to her condition. Before she could finish, the cafe door swung open violently. A sudden gust of wind whipped in, sending napkins spiraling into the air, and I turned instinctively, heart racing. Jess is awake. She asked for you. A nurse shouted breathlessly, urgency in her voice. The words knocked the wind from my lungs. As I bolted back towards the hospital, each corridor felt like a gauntlet of rising fear and anticipation. I flew past the nurses, my heart pounding with questions, both new and old. When I reached her room, Jessica lay propped up in bed, sunlight spilling through the window like a soft embrace. She looked fragile but illuminated, like a candle flickering in a storm. Hey, she whispered, eyes sparkled with a clarity I hadn't seen for days. I need to talk to you about what my mom said. Catching my breath, I could feel the shifting undercurrent of our reality locking into a storm on the horizon, tumultuous and unyielding. The revelation was coming, and I felt the weight of all that stood between us. Maybe we should wait, I said, panic creeping in. You need to rest. She shook her head gently, a small, determined smile breaking through. No. It's time. I want you to know the truth. I want you to decide what you really want. And just as the heaviness settled on my chest, I heard her say the words that would forever alter the course of our intertwining lives. The truth is, this isn't just about me anymore. And in that moment, I knew this was only the beginning of a truth that could set us free or shatter us entirely. Would it be strength or a burden? Only the shadows of tomorrow would tell. I stared at Jessica, her words piercing through me like arrows, each one carrying the weight of what lay unspoken between us. The air grew thick with unshakable tension, a delicate thread stretched and fraying at the edges. What do you mean? I asked, searching her eyes for clarity, for comfort. She reached out, fingers trembling, and I grasped her hand instinctively, hoping our connection would bridge the chasm of uncertainty. There's something you need to know about my heart, about why I want to marry you. My heart raced, an uncharted territory swarming with dread. Tell me that I made a decision a long time ago, before everything spiraled, she began, her voice a blend of resolve and fragility. I knew I'd be facing something serious with my health. My doctors told me my heart has been fighting against me, but that's not the full story. She inhaled deeply, gathering strength. I've been part of a clinical trial. There's a chance, albeit a slim one, that a heart transplant could save me. The revelations tumbled forth, swirling around me like leaves in a tempest. A heart transplant? I echoed, struggling to comprehend the gravity of her confession. Is that why you've been so distant? Why you might not want me to marry you? She closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself against a wave of memories that threatened to crash over her. No, she whispered, tears cascading down her cheeks. It's because I didn't want you to bind your heart to someone whose future is so uncertain. But the truth is, my doctors, they believe I might not have the fight for long unless I move forward with this. My heart won't hold out indefinitely. The words settled heavily between us, and an electric stillness enveloped the room. Each beat of her heart, as palpable as the truth unfurling before us, seemed to echo the sentiment of her fear. So, they want you to marry someone else. The words escaped my lips, bitter as bile. No. She cried, but the desperation in her tone twisted my gut. I mean, yes, there's a chance I could need someone to step up. She paused, her eyes widening. They want to perform this transplant as soon as we can find a matching donor. That's where the urgency lies. And if you're willing to be my husband, then my chance increases. We'd be legally binding, and she took a sobering breath. They said it may improve my chances for a compatible heart. Every ounce of hope felt like it was being snatched away. You meant to marry me as an insurance policy? I felt the anger boil within me, mixing with hurt and concern. How could she do this? No. Whether it's my body or yours, I want this. I want you. You know me, deep down, you know that my heart beats for you even now. Her voice quivered, desperation looming. But you need to understand that it's more than that. It's about giving me a fighting chance together. My mind spiraled, the weight of her confession pressing against me like a suffocating fog. The clarity of love intertwined with the complexities of practicality tore me apart inside. I wanted to scream, to throw her words back at her, but all I could do was sit in the bleak silence, each breath more labored than the last. Just then, Jessica's mother entered the room again, her face ashen, but there was a glimmer of something else in her eyes, concern mingling with hope. I overheard, she said softly, stepping closer, her voice a soothing balm. We'll get through this together, whatever the outcome. The doctors believe this could work, Jess. But I could hardly listen. A swirl of emotions enveloped me, each thread more frayed than the last. My heart ached for the vibrant girl I had known, the one with laughter that could cut through the thickest fog, and now here she stood, trying to weave the fabric of our future into something so precarious. "2 need time," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "To think about what this means. If I marry you, it's not a light decision. It's an anchor tethered to both hope and uncertainty." Jessica's face faltered, and I could see the flicker of defeat in her eyes. "Please don't say that," she pleaded. "I fought so hard to keep living, while still feeling you by my side. I can't bear to think of losing that." The devastation crashed around us, and for a moment, I felt selfish and small in this emotional tangle. Did I dare step into this paradox? Could I allow myself to blend my hopes for her future with the raw pain of losing her? I stepped back, suddenly overwhelmed, as if stepping outside into the chaos of the world would somehow bring clarity to my heart. "Just give me a moment," I managed before ducking out of the hospital room. The cool, dimly lit hallway embraced me, but even the dim illumination did little to dispel the darkness that wrapped around me like a shroud. The weight of her choice reverberated within me, a steady reminder that love was often laced with sacrifice and fear. As I leaned against the wall, my mind raced. I needed time, space for my heart to process all that unfolded in those fragile seconds, but just then a thought slashed through the chaos, a realization that turned my stomach to lead. What if I wasn't enough to save her? What if my love, bound to such uncertainty, couldn't shield her from the fate that loomed ominously above us? I thought of her smile, her laughter, the vibrant essence she poured into life with every heartbeat. But now, those same rhythms could be swept away, leaving behind echoes that would never cease to haunt me. As I stood there battling the emerging tides of loss, the door creaked open, and my breath caught in my throat. Jessica's mother stepped out, her expression torn between hope and heartache. With a heavy heart, she reached for my arm, her grip steadying me. "It's time you know everything, dear," she said with a softness that can only arise from profound sorrow. And as her words fell into the harsh light of that sterile corridor, I felt the weight of another revelation crashing down around me, on that would bind or break us all over again. "Jess has a brother," she whispered, a hint of desperation in her voice. "And he holds secrets we've carried, shadows that might change everything for you." The walls of my heart trembled. In that moment, I realized that the storm wasn't just brewing, it was a tempest of unspoken truths that could unravel every thread that tethered me to the hope I clung to so desperately. Secrets. My voice barely emerged, fear choking out the sound. Yes, secrets that might just reveal another path to saving her, a truth intertwined with the heart of it all. And with that, I stood on the precipice of understanding, the cloak of uncertainty gathering tighter around me, as I braced for the wave of revelation that would crash upon us all. The corridors of the hospital felt like a labyrinth, each turn leading back into the depths of uncertainty and despair. I held the weight of Jessica's mother's words tightly in my chest, the ominous revelation swirling within Meher brother, a figure I had never known existed, a hidden piece of this puzzle. I leaned against the cold wall, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling my lungs, fighting against the panic threatening to overwhelm me. "Her brother?" I finally managed to whisper, fear threading through my voice. The thought of another person involved sent shivers down my spine. Who was he? What had he done, or not done, that could change everything? "Yes," her mother said, her eyes shimmering with unspilled tears. "He vanished after he and Jess had an argument a few years back." It broke her heart, but now she hesitated, glancing back toward Jessica's room. "The doctors believe he might be a potential donor, given their genetic ties. But he's been inaccessible. We didn't know how to find him until after what?" I pressed, desperate for clarity, after we learned about her condition. I thought it was best to protect her from the heartbreak of lost family, particularly when she was already struggling so much. But now her words trailed off, the sorrow etched in her face deepening. "Now we must reach out. We need to find him." I nodded slowly, my mind racing. Could a brother who had seemingly abandoned her offer a solution? Was it ethical to reach out to someone who had left Jessica in her darkest hour? Yet hope flickered, an ember fighting against the winds of despair. "What's his name?" I asked, urgency fueling my voice. "Daniel," she said. "Daniel Mercer. But it's not that simple. I haven't spoken to him in so long, and Jess, she may not be ready for his return. There's a lot of unresolved pain there." As if on cue, the hospital intercom crackled, announcing visiting hours were ending soon. Jessica, my sweet, spirited Jessica, was waiting for me behind those walls, and I needed to return. I hesitated for a moment, weighing my options. Was it right to draw her into this tangle of emotions? To bring up a brother who might dredge up old wounds? "Listen," I turned back to her mother, "I need your help. If there's a chance Daniel could save Jess, we owe it to her to try. We can't sit on this." "Yes," but her gaze fell to the floor, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. What if his return only adds to Jess' pain? What if he can't help? Or worse, what if she doesn't want him in her life anymore? "Then we face that when it comes," I said firmly. "Right now, she needs hope, and if there's even a possibility that he could be what she needs to fight, then we have to reach out." With a deep sigh, she nodded, the lines of worry etched on her brow softening just a fraction. "You're right, but we have to tread carefully. Let me find what I can about him." As we parted, I returned to Jessica's room, my heart battling hope and helplessness in an unsteady rhythm. I pushed the door open cautiously. There she sat, vulnerability painted on her features, the faintest hint of a smile gracing her lips at my return. "Hey," she said softly, her eyes searching mine. "Did you think it through?" I took a seat beside her, reached for her hand, and steeled myself. "I did, Jess. I wish I could tell you it's certain, but I believe we might have a possible lead." Her anxious look deepened. "What does that mean?" I hesitated, caught between the desire to shield her from unnecessary pain and the urgent need to let her know the truth. "It might involve reaching out to your brother," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her expression shifted immediately, eyes wide with a mix of shock and fear. "Daniel?" she breathed. I don't know if I can handle that," but I pressed on, needing her to hear me. "I know it's complicated, Jess, but if he's a match it could give you a fighting chance. Please, just think about it. How could we not explore every option?" Tears pooled in her eyes, emotion swelling between us like a tidal wave. "You don't understand. We were close once, but then it all fell apart. I don't think I can handle the rejection again." "Then let's not dwell on that. Let's focus on the possibility," I urged, squeezing her hand, trying to anchor her amidst the storm of feelings threatening to sweep us both away. "We'll face this bridge when we get to it." Her gaze dropped, lost in thought as the shadows flickered across her features. "It's just so much. My health, the uncertainty of marrying you and now my brother. It is a lot, I know," I said, my voice steady. "But what's more is knowing you're facing it alone." A flicker of uncertainty ignited behind her eyes, but she was grappling with the tangled emotions weaved into her life. Even as I sensed her fear, I recognized a small spark of resolve manifesting within her. "Can you promise me something?" she finally asked. "Anything," I responded without hesitation. "Promise me, whatever happens with Daniel, that you'll stay with me," she whispered, the weight of her words pressing against my heart like a fragile promise. "I can't bear to lose you when everything else feels so uncertain." The sincerity in her gaze struck me like a bolt of lightning, igniting a fire within me. "I promise, Jess. I'm by your side, through the dark and the light, no matter what." But even as those words left my lips, unease settled in my chest. What if we weren't ready for what this might uncover? What if Daniel's return threatened to unravel what we had built together? Just then, there was a soft knock at the door, and my stomach twisted when I saw a nurse standing there, clipboard in hand. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said gently, "but we urgently need to discuss your treatment. And you'll want to prepare for possible visitors soon." Miss Mercer, the heart that had momentarily rallied around hope plummeted again. My breath caught as I saw a flicker of fear ignite in Jessica's eyes. "Visitors?" she echoed, her voice trembling. Before I could respond, the nurse continued, "Your brother has been located. He's on his way." The room went silent, the air thick with revelation. All at once, it felt as if the ground beneath us had shifted, our world tilting into uncharted territory. As fear and hope collided within me once more, I realized that we were well and truly on the cusp of a storm that would change everything. The fluorescent lights of Jessica's room flickered sporadically, casting a harsh glow that felt almost surreal in the haze of impending confrontation. I glanced at her, trying to gauge the tempest of emotions rising within her as the nurse's words hung heavy in the air. "Your brother?" Jessica whispered, her expression transforming into a complex tapestry of confusion and dread. She looked so small in that hospital bed, the weight of the world resting on her frail shoulders. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but a part of me felt frozen, aware that this situation was about to unravel the delicate threads of our lives. "Yes, he's being brought here," the nurse reiterated, her tone both resolute and compassionate. "You have a choice in how to handle this, but please be prepared." It may not be easy. That I leaned closer to Jessica, feeling the warmth radiating from her skin, a small comfort amidst the chaos. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Remember that," I urged softly, searching her eyes for any flicker of reassurance. That a barely perceptible nod followed, but fear clouded her gaze. "I don't know if I can do this. What if he doesn't want to see me? What if he's angry? The layers of her vulnerability broke my heart. Those are all valid questions, Jess, I hesitated, wondering how to navigate the minefield of emotions that threatened to explode at any moment. But there's also a chance that he could want to make amends. That he wants to help you. We can't dismiss that without giving it a chance. As I spoke, the door creaked open slightly wider, and I could see the nurse was lingering, gauging our responses. You have about 10 minutes before he arrives. I recommend having someone with you when you meet, she advised gently before slipping out, leaving us once again cocooned in a teetering silence. Jessica's breath grew shallow, and I squeezed her hand tightly, seeking to ground her through the maelstrom. Look at me. You are so brave, Jess. You fought so hard already. Facing Daniel can't diminish that strength, it can only add to it. Tears brimmed in her eyes, threatening to spill over. What if he can't help me? What if he hates me for even needing him? A deep sense of empathy washed over me. You're not just needing him, you're giving him a chance to be a part of your life again. You deserve every opportunity to fight for your health, even if it means revisiting painful chapters of the past. The door opened again, but this time it was Jessica's mother. Her face was a mask of emotions as she stepped inside, her eyes immediately catching the tension suffusing the room. Jess, I heard the news. Are you okay? She approached Jessica's bedside, concern knitting her brow. As Jessica's gaze darted between us, I held my breath. The room felt heavy with urgency, we stood on the precipice of something monumental. It's happening, Jessica said softly, almost as if speaking it aloud made it more real. I know, her mother responded, her voice trembling. How are you feeling about it? I don't know, Jessica admitted, her vulnerability laid bare like a raw wound. It feels impossible. Do I even want him here? We're here for you, no matter what you decide, her mother assured, reaching for Jessica's other hand, enveloping her in a cocoon of warmth and safety. But he'll always wonder what if he could save you. The weight of those words pressed down upon us. Jessica seemed lost in thought, as though she were straddling two worlds, the familiar pain of the past and an uncertain hope laced with dread. He left me without a word, and now it feels like I'm supposed to just forgive him. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to forget or pretend your pain doesn't exist, I chimed in. It's simply a way to clear space for what comes next. Don't feel pressure to make any decisions before you meet him. Just as those words slipped from my mouth, there was a soft knock at the door, and my heart raced. Before I could even catch my breath, the door opened fully, revealing a figure that both thrilled and terrified Jessica. He was taller than I expected, with a handsome face that mirrored Jessica's, but there was a shadow behind his eyes that hinted at battles fought in his absence. Daniel, Jess, he said, the name lingering on his lips like a prayer. His voice was deeper than I anticipated, filled with a mix of vulnerability and uncertainty. My gut twisted at the sight of him. This was the man who could either be the monster of her past or the savior she desperately needed. Daniel, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper, the tremors of surprise and fear evident. The moment was electric, all of us caught in the same web of choice and consequence. Time seemed to slow as the awkward silence settled around us, pregnant with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Then, Daniel took a tentative step forward. Can we talk? As Jessica's eyes locked onto his, I stood aside, acutely aware that this was her moment. A fragile thread of connection best left unbroken, like my silent promise, I would be by her side no matter what. Yet deep inside me, a tempest brewed. Would this encounter heal or wound deeper? I glanced back at the door, half expecting the entrance of a new nurse, maybe a doctor, anyone to distract from the emotional fallout brewing, but there were no distractions now. It was just Daniel and Jessica, two halves of a story I could only begin to fathom. The stakes had shifted dramatically, and time felt like a ticking bomb, an explosion of hope, fear, and uncertainty waiting to unfold. The silence hung in the air like a thick fog, almost suffocating. Jessica's eyes were fixed on Daniel, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed as if the world around them dissolved into nothingness. I could feel her heart racing from across the room, beating loudly in my ears, pulsing with both fear and a strange flicker of hope. Daniel cleared his throat, his gaze shifting between Jessica and her mother, a mixture of apprehension and longing etched across his face. "I know I've been absent, but I want to be here for you now," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "You want to be here after all this time?" Jessica asked, her bitterness creeping in, shading what could have been a moment of reconciliation. "You left me when I needed you most." He winced at her words, and for a brief moment, the weight of regret hung heavy between them. "I know," he breathed out, anguish lacing his tone. "I was young and scared. I thought I was protecting you, but I only made things worse. I can't take back the past, but I want to try to help now that I am not sure I want your help," Jessica said, her voice steadier than I expected, yet tinged with hesitation. She cast a glance towards me, seeking the comfort of my presence, the safety of my silent support. I gave her an encouraging nod, willing her to speak her truth. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she admitted, a hint of vulnerability slipping through the cracks of her armor. "And I don't know if I even want you here. My world is fragile, and the last thing I need is someone breaking it again." Daniel's face fell, a flicker of hurt passing through his eyes. "I understand," he replied softly. "But please, let me show you that I've changed. I want to try." As the air crackled with tension, I felt the heaviness of unspoken words weave between them, a tapestry of pain and yearning stitched with memories of a fractured family. I could see the shadows of their pasts lurking just behind them, threatening to cast despair over what could start as a healing journey. "That I don't need saving," Jessica said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I need to figure out how to save myself. Then let me help you. Just let me try," he pleaded, desperation coating his words like a thick bomb. Jessica's eyes darted toward me, searching for guidance, for some indication of what she should do. I stepped a little closer, whispering softly, "It's your choice, Jess. Whatever you need, just remember, I'm here for you." Daniel took another step forward. "What if I could help you with your treatment? I've been doing research. I've learned so much about your illness, about what you're facing." Jessica hesitated, the small glimmer of intrigue lighting her features. "You researched for me?" "Yes," he said, hope kindling in his eyes. "I want to understand what you're going through. I want to show you that I care." The moment was fragile, suspended between possibility and the weight of their shared past. Jessica's breathing quickened as she tried to weigh the options, her emotions a whirlpool of anger, love, and fear. Could she let him in again? Did she even want to try? "Why should I believe you?" she whispered, her voice cracking, and just as she spoke those words, there came a sudden commotion from the hallway, a flurry of voices and footsteps that intruded into our sacred moment. A nurse rushed past our door, her face pale and frantic, as she called out, "Code Blue in room 204. We need assistance." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. My heart sank as the tension thickened. I glanced back at Jessica, whose face drained of color. She pressed her lips together, clearly shaken. "That it's someone you know?" Daniel's brow furrowed in concern, but Jessica shook her head, the fear in her eyes unmistakable. "I don't know," she whispered, grasping the edges of the blanket. "I can't do this right now, Jess." "Wait," I began, but the look on her face silenced me. She was retreating into herself, the anguish of the moment creating an emotional wall between us. Daniel reached out, but Jessica flinched, pulling away. "I can't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't handle any more uncertainty. I don't want to deal with you and, whatever this is, while someone else is fighting for their life." In that moment, with the confusion and desperation swirling like a tempest all around us, I realized that the confrontation with Daniel had only scratched the surface of her struggle. As Jessica turned away, burying her face in her hands, I felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. "Please, don't go," Daniel said, his voice pleading, though he knew she was slipping from his grasp. But she was already too consumed by the chaos outside, the sirens of emergency reverberating through the hospital walls, heralding yet another reminder of the fragility of Lithia's precarious balance that could tilt at any moment. The nurse rushed back, summoning help for the emergency in the wing. I looked at Daniel. "Can you truly change, or will you break her all over again?" And in that moment of turmoil, I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of a resolve mingled with fear. Could he bear the weight of her pain, or would he only become another scar on her heart? Our story was spiraling, and as I watched Jessica vulnerably navigating her tumultuous feelings, I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the real battle was just beginning for all of us. The shrill cries of the emergency alarms echoed in my mind, reminding me of the urgency that was dangerously close to becoming our reality. Jessica's breath quickened, punctuated by the anxiety radiating from her core, and I felt every ounce of her fear seep into my bones. It was one thing to stand at the precipice of heartbreak over a father's absence, but facing the fragility of life itself was another beast entirely. Daniel edged closer to Jessica, his longing mixed with a helplessness that mirrored mine. "Jess, please, can we talk? Just for a moment?" he implored, his voice steady but thick with emotion. She shook her head vehemently, the momentary anger rising like a tide fueled by desperation. "No. You don't get to just waltz back into my life and expect me to trust you. Not now. Not ever." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I watched as Daniel's face contorted, caught between the pain of rejection and the fervent hope flickering in his chest. For a fleeting moment, I shared his turmoil. After all, had it not been me, her steadfast companion through thick and thin, always on the verge of understanding her struggle, who had taken the brunt of her emotional wreckage? "Jessica," I finally ventured quietly, urging her to see reason. "You have so much on your plate. Just take a breath. We don't have to do anything right now." "It's okay," but Jessica felt cornered, like a deer caught in headlights. Her hands trembled as she fought against the tide of tears threatening to spill. "How can I breathe? How can any of us breathe when every moment feels like a countdown?" At that moment, the world around faded, and I realized that the barrier her heart had erected around itself was more than just fear. It was survival. Before I could respond, someone entered the room, our resident doctor, young and earnest, with eyes that carried the weight of responsibility. "Excuse me, but we need to clear this area. There's been a critical situation that may involve patients from this ward. We really need everyone to step outside while we attend to the emergency." Jessica's eyes widened in alarm as she stood abruptly. "No. I can't leave." Her voice shook, betraying the steely resolve she had tried to project. I had seen her face those uncertainties before. They were like familiar shadows creeping into the corners of her mind. "Jess," I reached for her hand, squeezing it tight. "Let's go out for now. We can talk, think better, without all this chaos." She met my gaze, a fleeting moment of clarity breaking through the haze of despair. "You promise you'll stay by me?" The way she pleaded pulled at my heartstrings with an urgency that made me want to shield her from the world. "Always," I assured her. I turned to Daniel, who stood still, torn between stepping forward or retreating, his expression a mix of longing and uncertainty that struck a chord deep within me. "For now, let's step back, allow the professionals to do their job. Let's not let anything else slip away from us, okay?" As we stepped into the warm corridor, the oppressive tension dissipated, but I felt it lingering beneath the surface, an unhealed wound that needed tending. Just as I tried to encourage Jessica to focus on her breathing, I noticed a woman approaching, a nurse who we often saw on the ward. Her eyes twinkled evocatively, a reassuring smile dancing on her lips. "Hey, Jess, you doing okay?" she asked gently, her tone imbued with empathy. Jessica nodded, still shaken but grateful for the kindness. "I'm managing," she responded, her voice small. The nurse placed her hand on Jessica's shoulder, grounding her. "Your strength is inspiring. You've been through so much, and it takes true courage to stand your ground." For a brief moment, Jessica's expression softened, vulnerability peeking through her defenses. She smiled back in appreciation, and while it hardly mended the emotional rift within her, it reminded us of the goodness that often arose from the ashes of despair. The brief connection buoyed Jessica's spirits, and as the seconds ticked away, it offered a glimmer of hope. Yet, I couldn't shake the worry that colors the atmosphere surrounding Daniel remained unresolved, like an unwelcome ghost refusing to leave. Just as I opened my mouth to speak again, a sudden commotion punctured the fragile calm. We turned to see a group of doctors rushing past, their expressions grim, urgency in their every movement. "What happened?" I whispered, dread tightening around my heart as I realized we were on the cusp of a storm we couldn't control. That I looked back at Jessica, who was now staring down the hallway with a mixture of dread and an underlying curiosity. The nurse was already getting swept up in another call for help, leaving us alone once again in that unpredictable space. That I am not ready for this, Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible above the chaos. What if? Don't think about the what ifs, Jess, I urged, clenching her hand tighter, desperate to tether her to the present. Whatever is coming next, we will face it together. Remember that. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she nodded faintly, taking a deep breath as the moment stretched thin. We had weathered storms before, but each one felt more daunting than the last, and for the first time, I was painfully aware of how fragile our reality had become. And then, amidst the chaos that surrounded us, the world shifted once more as a voice echoed unmistakably from the other end of the corridor, a familiar voice that sent my world spiraling into a new wavelength of confusion. Help! Someone, please! It was Daniel's almost panicked shout, and before I could process what was happening, the impossibility of his words hung over our heads like a storm cloud, promising the downpour that we had all feared. Jess! I shouted, my heart pounding. We need to move. But it was too late. The shattering truth of a shocking revelation was looming over us, and as I turned to run towards the unfolding chaos, I could see fear reflected back in Jessica's eyes. Something was wrong, and we were all about to find out just how wrong it really was. The hospital corridor felt like a living creature, pulsing with urgency as I pushed forward, Jessica's hand still clasped tightly in mine. My heart thundered in my chest, every beat punctuating the warnings echoing in my mind. Daniel's voice rang clear, but panic tangled it into something almost unrecognizable. What had gone wrong? Stay close to me, Jess, I urged, my eyes darting ahead, searching for him, for any sign of what was happening. We rounded a corner, and the scene that awaited us was more chaotic than I could have anticipated. A cluster of doctors had gathered, their shadows flickering in and out of the fluorescence above, while nurses shouted instructions, their voices sharp and brittle. Panic clung to the air, thick enough to cut through. Make room. We need space. One of them barked, pushing through with a gurney populated by the frail figure of a patient, their face obscured by medical sheets that discreetly withheld even a hint at their condition. Daniel! I called, desperation creeping into my voice. I turned back to Jessica. She was frozen, her eyes wide and glassy, reflecting the turmoil encroaching on her. The worry I felt for her pierced me anew. It will be okay, we just have to find him. Just then, another wave of personnel surged past, and among them, I caught a glimpse of Daniel's face, hair disheveled, eyes fearful and earnest. He was looking straight at us, his expression torn between urgency and something deeper, something dark and spiraling. He gasped, reaching a hand out toward us as if he could bridge the distance that had suddenly expanded between us. It's about my father. My stomach dropped. This was the moment one I couldn't have been prepared for even if I had tried. Was this the catalyst that would shatter Jessica completely? Or was it the flicker of change we so desperately needed? Daniel! Jessica shouted, the warmth of hope swirling into her voice, but it was painted with the sheen of fear. What's happened? He shook his head, panic coursing through his veins. He collapsed. He's here, and they're trying to stabilize him now. I tried to get to him before it was too late. Each syllable felt like a dagger somewhere deep inside me, striking against the worry I had been building ever since Daniel walked back into our lives. Jessica stood frozen beside me, her internal fears flaring up, caught in a whirlwind of confusion. Would she really face the possibility of losing someone so important to her again? I stepped closer to Daniel, my voice barely a whisper. What do you need from us? His face was flushed, and I could see the tremors coursing through him, too. You should stay with Jess. I'm not sure how all of this is going to unfold. But there's something I need to tell you. Something I haven't found the courage to say until now. Daniel, I interrupted, my heart thumping in my ears. Your father, do you know how serious this is? We can't keep. We know. His voice boomed in that chaotic space, drowning out the surrounding pandemonium. You don't understand. This isn't just about him, it's about everything I've kept locked inside. God, it's about us. About you and Jess. I never meant. Jessica flinched at his outburst, her fear morphing into shock. She stepped forward, a resolve mixed with confusion building in her features. What do you mean, Daniel? You can't just drop that on us. Before he could respond, a doctor stepped in, urgency etched across their features. Daniel. We need you to step back. Your father needs attention now. He was swept away, tugged into the maelstrom of urgent voices and cries. Jessica stood silent, tears pooling in her eyes, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation. The pieces of our reality were shifting again, creating more distance than I had thought was possible. Jess, I settled into her line of sight, cupping her cheeks, feeling the tension dissolve with every touch. We have to get through this. I know it's hard, but you're not alone. I'm here for you always. But the weight of her turmoil pushed against the surface of resolve I tried to project, and I could see in her eyes the myriad questions swimming just beneath, threatening to surface and engulf us both. Is this all a sign? She murmured, her gaze lingering on the retreating shadows of Daniel and the medical team. What if something happens to him, too? Then we'll face it together, I insisted. But even as I spoke, a creeping sense of dread wound itself around my heart. Could we withstand yet another loss? And at what cost does loyalty bind us to those we care about? Jess opened her mouth, as if to respond, when the loud crash of metal echoed through the hallway. A cart toppled over. Several staff members rushed toward it, and in the ensuing chaos, I lost sight of her. Jessica. I called, panic rising in my throat, but the frantic sounds around me drowned my voice. The fear of losing her, too, surged like a tidal wave, threatening to pull me under. After battling through bodies darting in each direction, I finally caught sight of her, but the image struck me like a punch to the gut. She stood at the edge of a doorway, staring blankly inside an empty room, the weight of mourning visible on her shoulders. I approached, attempting to reach her, but felt her distance pulsing with an intensity that left me breathless. Jess, I pleaded, stepping closer, my heart in my throat. Please don't. Do you see it? She whispered, staring into the void around her. The fragility, the bitterness of this reality. This place is built on hope and despair. What if it all just collapses? And as she spoke those weighty words, a voice echoed from down the hall, bringing with it a tremor that seized me directly in the chest. Code Blue. We have a Code Blue in room 302. I need all available units. An icy chill rushed through the corridor, striking at the heart of everything I thought I understood about facing loss. I turned to Jessica, shock mingling with dread as we both slowly began to comprehend the depths of the storm surrounding us. Jess, I stammered, the air thick with fear. We need to find out who, but the flicker of understanding had been snuffed out, too quickly by the darkness looming over us, and as her eyes filled with fear and perhaps something else entirely, I could feel the world around us begin to spiral once again into chaos. The hospital walls seemed to throb with each urgent call, a heartbeat drowning in uncertainty as I stood there, paralyzed. Jessica's gaze was lost, resting somewhere far beyond the stark fluorescent lights, a shadow of disbelief draping her like a second skin. Just moments ago, we had been adrift in the chaos, navigating fears that felt so alien yet so familiarly rooted in our past. Now, as the weight of impending loss pressed down upon us, I couldn't fathom how to guide her through the disarray. Jessica, I said softly, my voice quivering against the pulse of the hospital life thrumming around us. Look at me. Slowly, she turned her head, her expression softening ever so slightly as our eyes met. The anguish that painted her features held a depth I had never seen. It felt heavy, suffocating yet pitifully fragile. Instinctively, I reached out, my fingers intertwining with hers, offering what small semblance of comfort I could. That we don't know what's happening yet, I reminded her gently, though uncertainty gnawed at the corners of my heart. We have to stay together. Please. We can't let this tear us apart. She blinked, each flutter of her lashes revealing the cracks in her armor. But it feels like we're tethered to grief, you know. Everything we touch, it's all slipping away. Before I could answer, Daniel's voice pierced through the din, an echo of fear that sent ripples down my spine. My father. He shouted, desperation carrying his words through the air like a painful reminder. In that moment, I felt the collective heartbreak of our shared memories, the bonds formed from laughter and loss, and everything we'd navigated before this chaos. "Let's go to him," I urged, pulling Jessica gently into motion, the intertwined warmth of our hands a beacon against the tumult. Each step through the hall felt like traversing a battleground, where every corner turned could bring news that tilted our world again, but even as we approached the waiting area outside room 302, a firm hand grasped my shoulder, halting my forward motion. I spun around to find a nurse, her eyes teetering on the edge of urgency and empathy. "Excuse me," she began, her voice low and measured. "You're looking for Daniel?" "I'm afraid." She hesitated, her gaze darting away for a crucial moment. "You need to prepare yourself. There may not be much they can do for his father now." The air thickened, stifling me as though I had inhaled lead. Jessica's breath hitched beside me, our shared heartache palpable. "No," she whispered, the word cracking in the air like fragile glass. Not again. That I felt as though everything inside me shifted, twisted by a malevolence I wanted to curse at the world. A part of me wanted to scream at the nurse, to demand she take it back, to tell us this wasn't happening. I wanted to protect the girl beside me from this unbearable ache that threatened to consume us. There I started, my voice faltering under the weight of disbelief. "Is there anything we can do?" The nurse's eyes softened, a flicker of kindness that felt incongruent with the reality unfolding. "You can be there for him. He'll need you now more than ever," she replied. "Just let him know he isn't alone." That I nodded, though uncertainty flooded my veins. The fight running through Daniel's veins, his bravery against this tide of adversity, surged back to the forefront of my mind. How could I offer him the arms of comfort when my own heart was so heavy? I turned to Jessica, seeing the glimmer of raw emotion simmering just beneath the surface. "We can be strong together for him," I said, though the weight of those words felt like a promise I wasn't ready to make. But as we approached the door of room 302, a sudden, sharp clang broke through the atmosphere, a sickening jolt that echoed through the corridor. The lobby lights flickered momentarily, plunging the scene into dimness before resuming their relentless hum. Jessica recoiled, instinctively clutching my hand tighter. "What was that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Just a malfunction or something," I replied, my own heart racing in reply to her fear. But then, a scuffle erupted just beyond the door, raising the hairs on the back of my neck. Voices raised in panic, scattered commands cutting through the tension. "No. Stop. We need control." And then, a gut-wrenching scream echoed through the hala, sound so raw and primal it hung in the air like a noose, choking us both as we stared at each other wide-eyed. "Daniel!" I shouted instinctively, my feet already moving before my mind could reconcile the tumult of emotions. I didn't know what awaited us behind that door, but with Jessica close in step, we pushed through. The chaotic scene that met us inside was worse than any nightmare I could have imagined. Daniel was on the floor, hands clenched around his hair, a look of horror etched across his face. Medical personnel swarmed around the gurney, a figure barely visible amongst the frenzy of bodies and equipment. "Get off him!" Daniel cried, his voice raw and anguished. "You have to help. That's my father." The world around me blurred once more as I tried to process it all, the gravity of the scene, the fear etched in Daniel's eyes, and the weight of Jessica's hand desperately gripping mine. But then, I caught a glimpse of the figure on the gurney, illuminated by the harsh lights overhead. For a fleeting moment, I thought I could see. No, it couldn't be. "Wait!" I gasped, my heart plummeting as the realization gripped me. The surgical masks obscured their features, but the shape, the build, I felt the recognition clawing back through the haze. This wasn't just Daniel's father. It was someone who had left an indelible mark on our lives long ago, someone I had never imagined I'd face again in such tragic circumstances. "Dear God, no!" I managed to choke out as the revelation sank deeper, threatening to drown me in a tide of chaos and emotion. Jessica turned sharply, her own shock mirroring mine as the chaotic howl of the hospital closed around us, wrapping us in a fear we thought we had escaped, only to find ourselves pulled back into its terrifying embrace once more. The whirlwind of chaos surrounding me felt like a tempest erupting in the eye of a storm, and amidst the screaming sirens and frantic voices, I could hardly hold on to the fragments of my reality. As I stood there with Jessica, my heart racing, I realized just how precarious the balance had become, strung taut like an unwelcome reminder that life itself was fragile. Daniel's father lay on the gurney, a lifeless pallor shrouding his features, drowning the room in uncertainty and fear. Memories surged, uninvited years gone by that laid bare the weight of family ties and the heartbreak of abandonment. I remembered the laughter that had once filled our homes, the weight of expectations bearing down as silently as the sterile air that filled this hospital corridor. Now here we stood, at the precipice of a tragedy that threatened to consume everything we held dear. "Daniel," I heard Jessica's soft voice cut through the din, shaking as it wove its way toward her brother, now curled on the floor, lost in devastation. "Let them work. We need to give them space to help him." But Daniel appeared oblivious to her plea, his voice a raw ember amidst the chaos. "No, no. You don't understand, they can save him. You have to help him." His words echoed with desperation, creating a barrier around us that felt insurmountable. With Jessica's hand clasped tightly in mine, I stepped forward, trying to reach him, to bridge the chasm that had widened between us since the moment he entered. "Daniel. Please, they're doing everything they can. Let them work," I called out. At my voice, he faltered, looking up towards me with eyes as wild and desperate as a cornered animal. "You don't know what it's like. You don't understand." I let go, and now his words trailed off, the waves of regret crashing around him. "None of us know what it's like unless we share our truths," Jessica said, her voice gaining strength, rising against the storm. "You were young then, Daniel. You thought you were protecting me from pain. But we can't keep throwing blame in a time like this. We need each other." At her declaration, a tense silence fell over the chaos, and I could see something shift behind Daniel's eyes just for a moment, the flicker of understanding illuminating the shadows of fear. "That I can't forgive myself," he finally confessed, his voice breaking, raw vulnerability spilling from his heart. "I never forgave myself for leaving you, Jess, and now, my father." I watched, spellbound, as he crumbled beneath the weight of his own heartache. "Daniel," Jessica whispered gently, taking a hesitant step toward him. "Forgiveness isn't a one-way street. It's learning to shoulder the burden together, even if you don't know where the road leads." Their eyes met in a moment of shared pain that felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. In that instant, the thread connecting us all stretched taut and frayed, yet somehow still bound us together. And as the medical team continued to work on Daniel's father, the world faded away just for a moment. I was no longer lost in the chaos, but anchored in the connection between two siblings torn apart by time and misunderstandings. It was this revelation, I realized, that turned the tide of hopelessness binding us. It was the understanding that grief, when shared, could transform into the kind of healing neither of them could ever have achieved alone. The chaos of the hospital faded into a distant echo, the screen of frantic movements obscuring our truth, but I felt the rush of connection between them pull me in. Then the doctor stepped away, glancing briefly at Daniel and Jessica, a gleam of determination mixed with sorrow brimming in her eyes. "We've stabilized him for now, but he's critical. We'll need both of you to stay strong and focused. You're his family." My pulse quickened, wishing I could grasp this moment and hold on to it as a fortress against the lurking shadows of our past. "Jess," I whispered softly, my voice trembling, "this is the moment where you show him the willingness to step forward together." With one final look of reassurance, Jessica stepped into the storm, her hand extending toward Daniel, who hesitated for only an instant before grasping it tightly, two souls intertwined once more on uncertain ground. "Whatever happens next, we face this together," he said, a thread of resolve winding tightly around his words. "I'm sorry I left you when you needed me most. I'm here now. We're here now." And in that moment, I understood, in the rawness of grief and uncertainty, they had found a glimmer of hope forged from their vulnerability, a reminder that healing could sprout even in the face of devastation. Tears streamed down Jessica's face, relief intermingled with pain. "You're my brother, and no matter what, I still love you," she said, each syllable carrying the weight of everything left unsaid. As they embraced, the room was heavy yet bright. They stood together, a united front, guided by the light of forgiveness piercing through the storms of their past. I felt a swelling in my chest. That moment burned itself into my soul. I realized that love wasn't always about perfection, it was wrapped up in understanding, in choosing to walk the jagged paths together despite fear. Jess, I said, stepping closer, readying my own truth to weave into their fray. I want to marry you. I want to wear your scars, carry your heart, and stand beside you through the storms and the healing. But it has to be your choice, too. With her head raised, determination sparkled in her eyes, illuminating the remnants of the shadows once cast there. Then let's move forward together, she breathed, her voice steady as she clasped my hand, feeling the pulse of our love intertwined with the healing of her sibling bond. And as we embraced the uncertainty of the future, wrapped in the warmth of new beginnings, we were a constellation of scars stitched with delicate threads of hope amidst the chaos, a reminder that love, in all its complexities, has the strength to endure even the most tumultuous storms. And as the doors to possibilities opened wide again, I whispered the truth buried deep in my heart, together through it all, I choose you. In that moment, beneath the fragile light of hope bursting through despair, we stood united, ready to face whatever might come, for love was what truly wove us together, a bond forged in scars healed by the beauty of understanding. As the triumph of reunion washed over us like fresh rain, I knew, this was only the beginning.